Welcome to the 2015-16 school year. There is no doubt that we live in a high-speed world where you can go to bed being able to log into your Google Mail one way and wake up the next morning and it has completely changed. This new fast-paced philosophy has many advantages, but it can also be exhausting, trying to keep up with the latest model or version. As of late, education is no different. There are many fads that seem like the latest, greatest thing that are in one day, like smartboards and iClickers, and out the next day, making way for something new and exciting. So where do we invest our time? How do we get through the year without being overwhelmed? Jim Collins says we should all be hedgehogs. Hedgehogs see what is essential and ignore the rest. The big question is, what's essential? 5 years ago, representatives from each discipline and grade level got together to write our 5-year goals. Then, in 2013, a smaller group met to revise the goals to be more concise and clear. At the present time, there are 3 district curriculum and instruction goals. While creating our goals, teams of teachers read Mike Schmoker's book called Focus: Elevating the Essentials to Radically Improve Student Learning. As we work toward these goals, we must constantly remind ourselves of why they're important. Schmoker's research states that believe this or don't, these 3 elements, if even reasonably well executed, would have more impact than all other initiatives combined, and would wholly redefine what public schools can accomplish with children of every socioeconomic stratum. So what are those elements? Schmoker says that the 3 essential elements that all teachers should focus on are content-rich curriculum, sound lessons, and authentic literacy. Let's see how close Medford's focus has been to what research says should be our focus. I've color-coded these slides to show the similarities between our curriculum and instruction goals and what Schmoker's research says will make the most impact to student learning. For the past 5 years, we have been working toward reviewing and revising essential outcomes, which compares to Schmoker's content-rich curriculum. Let's start with looking at our first goal and how it relates to Schmoker's research on coherent curriculum. We have been working toward a coherent curriculum for many years. In our PLCs and subject area workshops, we have made strides in collectively selecting the standards that each of us will teach as a team. Schmoker goes a little further and gives us a simple structure to create that decent, coherent curriculum. Many of the subject areas met this summer, and we have started refining our curriculum maps to meet those suggestions. So to start off with Goal 1, in order to better communicate our curriculum to our colleagues, to our students, and to our parents, your first team goal this year will be to refine your essential outcome map into a more coherent curriculum map. Your maps should include time the skill was taught, essential question, unit topic, skill or content taught, common text or vocabulary that will be read, and assessment questions. If you teach more than one subject or course, work together as a team to complete this task. If you are the only teacher and you teach multiple courses, you may only have to do up to 3, whatever you think is a realistic goal. If your subject is up for adoption this year, such as social studies, you may only want to revise parts of your map as your content may change. When meeting with your team to revise your curriculum maps, you need to keep in mind that coherent curriculum is a marriage between conformity and creativity. You can't have too much conformity, or the map becomes too rigid. For example, some districts and states require that all teachers are on the same page on the same day. That's too rigid. The other side of the spectrum is too much creativity. If every teacher decided to teach what they thought was fun or interesting, then we would be lacking in the coherent part of the curriculum. Therefore, as a team, and if you're a team of 1, it's easier to make decisions, you should think of your curriculum map like taking a trip. The conformity part of the trip is your itinerary. Before going, you get together with your team and agree on the places you'll stop. If you're going out west, for example, you may decide that you have to go to Mount Rushmore, the Badlands, and Jewel Cave. These are non-negotiable. Your creativity as a teacher comes in on the creative way you get there. So if you decide to take the highway and your colleague decides to take the back roads, that's okay, as long as you both get there within the timeline. As you know, there's only so much time in a quarter or semester, so you have to be selective in the number of non-negotiable stops that your team will make. One quick note for clarification. If you are a certified staff member but do not have any content or skills that you teach directly to students, you're probably saying, I don't have a curriculum that I teach, so what will my goal be? Depending on your situation, you will need to align yourself with a team that makes sense with your job. For example, if I'm a library media specialist, I may want to align myself with a content area such as science or social studies, as they will have to include literacy skills within their maps. You could then support them through their process. However, if it makes absolutely no sense for you to create or even help with a curriculum map, then you will be exempt from this goal. Please let me know in an email if you believe this is you. 9 years ago in our PLC teams, we worked on listing the essential skills that our students had to master before exiting our classes. Now, many years later, it is time to revise those plans to include more detail. Schmoker suggests the following headings: time frame, unit topic, essential question, skills, text to be read, which is common, and assessment questions that could be used for discussion or writing. Here's what it would look like. You'll notice that the skills are the same both in the original document and the revised document. And although time frame and unit topic may be self-explanatory, 3 of the headings need a little further explanation: essential question, questions for assessment, and text. Let's first talk text. One area that has been added to the coherent curriculum map is text or common text. This goes along with our district goal that states that we will incorporate writing and vocabulary across various disciplines. It also fits into Schmoker's research that states that authentic literacy is a key ingredient that we need to focus on. Therefore, as a team, you need to figure out what texts you will read in common. If you are the only teacher of that course, you will make that determination on your own, but it needs to be stated in the map. Don't fall into the trap of stating Chapter 7. Instead, look at Chapter 7 and see if there are any key parts that all kids have to read. Think of it this way. If you gave your students an assignment to read Chapter 7 and you came back on Monday and some kids hadn't read Chapter 7, what key pieces would you read out loud in class in order to make sure everyone had the information? If it is all of Chapter 7, then go ahead and include Chapter 7 as your required common reading. Other texts can include essays, poems, articles, etc. If your area is less text dependent, like Phi-Ed or math, you can change this column to vocabulary. If you're confused in this area, email me and I'll stop by when you're working on your curriculum map. Another new element in the curriculum map is the essential question. An essential question should be designed to get your students thinking. Questions that are essential are often open-ended or typically do not have a single final correct answer, thought-provoking and intellectually engaging, often sparking discussion and debate. It calls for higher order thinking. In other words, it cannot be effectively answered by recall alone, requires support and justification, not just an answer, and it recurs over time, meaning the question can and should be revisited again and again. If this sounds familiar, you may recognize that the attributes of essential questions are similar to those of essential outcomes, only in a question format. Here are some examples of essential questions. Don't think you need to recreate the wheel. Essential questions have been around for years. Just use a Google search and enter your topic and essential question. More than likely, someone has come up with some essential questions that match your unit topics. Finally, there's a section called Questions for Assessment. In the past, many curriculum maps had a section called Assessment, and teams would put in vague information like Chapter 7 test. With this curriculum map, Schmoker asks that you think about your assessment questions. What is it that you truly want your students to be able to answer when you give them your assessment? In other words, questions for assessment are based off your essential question, but are more specific to the content you presented in that unit. If you look at this example, you'll see that the essential question could be used for multiple units. How do you use language to empower yourself on paper? The assessment question, then, is more specific to the content taught during that unit. Therefore, your team's first goal this year will be to revise your essential outcome maps into coherent curriculum maps that include time the skill is taught, essential question, skill or content taught, the common text or vocabulary, and assessment questions. Again, if you teach more than one subject or course, work together as a team to complete this task. If you're the only teacher and you teach multiple courses, try to complete at least 3 maps. If your subject is up for adoption this year, you may want to only revise parts of your map as your content may change. The second part of a decent, coherent curriculum is that the curriculum that we say we are going to teach is actually taught. And the only way to ensure that it is actually taught is to have a common assessment and to review that data as a team. Which brings us to Goal 2. For each meeting, your team will need to spend some time discussing common assessment data. Note that last year you used only your SLO data during discussions. This year, you can continue to use your SLO data as your common assessment discussions. However, you may also want to include other skills to collect data on, such as a writing prompt. In order to encourage your team to look at more than just your SLO data, here are some changes to the Slo process. For the last 2 years, in order to learn the process, you have used PLC time to write your SLO, decide on common assessments for the SLO, collect and analyze data for your SLO. Looking at this graphic, you'll see that your team selected your SLO in August, then collected baseline data in September, and wrote your SLO. After that, most of you were required to test your students 7 more times throughout the year, once before each PLC team meeting, so that you can discuss the progress of your students. If this process works for you, you can continue it this year. If you would like to discuss more than just your SLO during PLC times, or if you are doing an individual SLO, then there's a different option. You would still each have one SLO that you are tracking data for and discussing at PLC team meetings. The difference is that you would only have to track or discuss your SLO 4 times throughout the year. You would still pick your SLO in August, collect your baseline data in September, and write your SLO by October. However, instead of collecting data in October, November, February, March, and April for your SLO, you would only collect and discuss your data in September, January, and May. The other 5 months would then be freed up to collect data for different course skills and/or topics. You could assess and discuss a different skill each month, or you could select 1 or 2 skills to assess more often. The option that you have is what those data discussions will be about. Either all 8 data collections can be on one SLO, or 3 data discussions can be on your SLO, and then in addition, your team can choose different skills to collect and discuss during the remaining 5 PLC team meetings. But the bottom line is that you should be discussing students' progress or lack of progress using data collected from your classroom at least once during each PLC team meeting. Let's revisit our goals again. Another portion of the research states that teachers will provide sound lessons. Although that goal is not directly related to our curriculum goals, it does fall into our district administrative goal that states, communicate clear and consistent expectations and provide ongoing, flexible support to all staff to ensure common goals are accomplished. Our district has clear expectations of what good teaching looks like. These expectations are outlined in Charlotte Danielson's evaluation tool, which we have used for the past 9 years. Principals and teachers have been trained on what those expectations look like in a classroom setting. Although administration is still evaluating all areas of Danielson framework for each teacher, we have decided to specifically collect data as a team in the area of instruction that coincide with Schmoker's research. According to Danielson and Schmoker, an effective lesson must have a clear objective, activities that engage student thinking, which include abundant opportunities for students to write, read, and discuss, and constant feedback from student to teacher and teacher to student. One quick note for clarification. Again, if you are a certified staff member but don't directly teach students, you're probably saying, how are administrators going to evaluate me on sound lessons? Depending on your situation, we will not. Like previous years, we will be using a different evaluation tool to evaluate your performance. The good news is that Teachscape is working toward including your specific evaluation tool into their program, so stay tuned in the future for more specific information related to your position. Back to sound lessons. In order to assess if you have clearly communicated the objective to students,